Good morning. Today my speech will try to explain how the legacy of Johann Sebastian Bach resonates in the music of Giancarlo Facchinetti, and also how, in my opinion, this particular case could be considered emblematic of a love-hate attitude toward tradition, typical of many authors of the 20th century. Just to begin, considering that this composer is unfortunately not as well known as it should be, I will summarize shortly who Giancarlo Facchinetti was. Born in Brescia in the north of Italy in 1936, he studied piano with Ada Carati, conducted with Antonino Votto, and composition with Bruno Bettinelli. He had a significant career as a conductor, but dedicated himself most of all to teaching and composing. Although he is known especially for his incidental music in theatrical production, he was author of 6 operas and of a vast catalogue of symphonic, chamber and vocal music. The music of Facchinetti tries to find a difficult balance between the choice of dodecaphonic and serial language of his most committed works, and the desire of freedom, which could be seen in unusual compositions, sometimes desecrating, playing with musical styles and rhetorical apparatus of the past. This curious aesthetic strabismus is a conscious choice of Facchinetti, who used it to criticize at the same time the excesses of academicism and the dogmas of the avant-gardes, cultivating the idea to open for himself and other composers a personal, creative path not poisoned by abstract theories, discussions. In this light, we can also try to interpret the relation between Facchinetti and the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. When we observe Facchinetti's works directly refer to the cantor, for example, quotating Bach themes, and works showing relation with Bach music even without declared references as well, we find contradictory episodes outlining different categories of relation with the model, which of them also not free from ambiguity. The first category, definitely traditional, includes composition made from a Bach theme. This is the case of Facchinetti Ricercare on a Bach theme for organ 4 hands, written in 1995. The theme is the choral Ruht voll ihr heiligen Gebeine from Johannes Passion, melody that Facchinetti develops using an imitative style and a very transparent counterpoint. The harmony shows sometimes a modern tension, but more often adapts itself to the Bach theme. The second category, more difficult to define, is the homage, as in the Facchinetti 1975 composition Contrappunti Omaggio a Bach, which is part of the most radical period of Giancarlo Facchinetti's production between 1970 and 1980, characterized by rigorous serial and also aleatoric writing. Contrappunti is an extremely intricate musical page, really complex to decipher both from compositional and performing point of view. The homage to Bach does not refer to the use of thematic materials. The art of cantor is rather evoked with a particularly refined use of contrapuntal techniques and serial combinations, which is easier to grasp on the written page than on listening. The speculative component of this music perhaps constitutes indeed the true meaning of the tribute to the great master, whose polyphonic knowledge was an equally important reference for the 12th-tone adept Facchinetti than the authors of the Second Vienna School. A third category includes pieces in which Bachian models and techniques are applied in a foreign musical context, in this case, the serial language. I quote here one of the most important works written by Facchinetti, the Passio Christi of 2003. Among the obvious parallels with the great Bachian passions, I would like to emphasize one particular aspect: the use of musical references to connect textual segments of the work, building occult constructions of meaning. In Bach, it is a common practice which ensures the dramatic coherence of a long composition divided into episodes. We find it in Facchinetti too, due to the control of serial technique, and I will give you just one example. In number 14, during Pilate's interrogation, Jesus pronounces the words omnis qui est ex veritate haudit vocem meam, over a sudden silence. At the beginning of the next number, Pilate utters the anguished question quid est veritas, intoning it on the same sound as vocem meam. The question contains its answer in a polyphony of concept that certainly would not have displeased Bach.
Omnis qui est ex veritas
In the fourth category, Bach is not a model anymore, but the target of a subversive humorous game. It is no coincidence that the suite to which I refer, entitled Avant Spettacolo, has a subtitle like Profanations for Voices and Instruments. In this musical cycle from 1996, but integrated two times with other pieces in 2005 and 2015, Facchinetti writes mixing cultured influences and the language of musical cabaret. This is clear especially in the second intermezzo, with a direct quotation from one of Bach's best-known chorales, Wie viel du deine Wege, presented with apparent devotion. By explicit admission of the composer, the theme is treated with irreverence, harmoniously manipulated, twisted on rhythmic sequences of folk dance, and also distorted with alienating instrumental combinations. Under the surface of disengagement, the piece and the entire Avant Spettacolo hide a thoughtful aesthetical project, elaborating with a different language a feeling deeply rooted in the composer. The same 20th century feeling of loneliness The identical void of meaning that Facchinetti had expressed elsewhere with a sophisticated serial idiom, here we find in the form of paradox, of the evocation of a lost age of innocence. The intermezzo celebrates the crumbling of hierarchies and value systems, a collapse that should not perhaps be interpreted as an irreparable loss, but in the playful setting of humor as an opportunity to reinvent the war outside of pre-established schemes imposed by tradition and habit. Possible to find a balance between the ambiguous attitudes toward Bach music that we described? Maybe we have an answer studying the last piano piece written by Facchinetti in 2015, 2 years before his death, theme and variation on a Bach choral, which once again is Wie viel du deine Wege. The musical variety freely mixes stylistic elements from different eras. The original motif is manipulated by inserting it in antithetical contexts, from toccata sequences alla Prokofiev to processes of disintegration of the sound material reminiscent of Scriabin, as it happens in the third variation, always with particular attention to the contrapuntal structure. The coda recomposes a more restrained atmosphere in a sophisticated balance between meditation and alienation. We are used to interpret the 20th century as a contiguity of parallel worlds, mostly at war with each other and in a conflictual relationship with tradition. From the point of view that Facchinetti offers us, the incredible variety of the music of the 20th century appears not the split produced by the clash between quarrelsome particles, but a vital Big Bang, the desperate attempt to reiterate the need for art and its independence while crossing the collapse of every aesthetic framework of the past. An invitation to a finally positive interpretation of the 20th century as a time of a supreme creativity rather than as an uninterrupted sequence of negation, prohibitions, and short circuits. In this perspective, the past, of which Johann Sebastian Bach is a symbol, must not be revered or mocked, but simply accepted as an essential component of our musical identity. Therefore, Facchinetti draws the profile of an authentically renewed musical language, aware of its limits and therefore finally free from epigonism and radicalism, and that he could find a personal path to the future while contemplating and rethinking Bach's music is surely a strong demonstration of the eternal actuality of Cantor's lesson. Thank you.